And now to continue, this is Gabe Coker again, your host of the Political Beast podcast for ModState here on Wednesday, our January 11th. I have with me one of my very best friends, who also happens to be someone that I have known for many years. That doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. He also happens to be my boss, Jonathan DeViney. Jonathan, you there?
Yes, I'm here, Gabe. Thanks for having me on again.
Jonathan, as you know, our first guest for this podcast was Sheriff Estrada. We spoke about immigration. We spoke about Arizona. We spoke about America's relationship with Mexico. We spoke about NAFTA. And it led quite beautifully into the conversation that I got to have with Mitch Tyner, the Florida Trump campaign guru, who is currently on a thank you tour on behalf of Donald Trump. And we spoke for almost an hour about the speech, the farewell speech that Obama gave, and about the future of this country. You and I, when we do a podcast, it normally follows a pretty predictable pattern, and I like that. We do our two issues, we do the rapid fire round, we do our in mixed company to wrap everything up. I really feel like we should segue from the Mitch Tyner interview. So I'm going to repeat for the listener. I'm going to repeat how I ended the interview with Mitch Tyner and sort of allow you to respond to that.
Okay.
Dr. Adrian Rogers was the pastor of Bellevue Church in Memphis, Tennessee. And one of my favorite preachers, listened to him, it seems like all my life. It's interesting, he died in 2005. And I told this to Mitch Tyner, and he laughed. He goes, I didn't realize that Dr. Adrian Rogers was dead until 2007, because I had been listening to him on the radio, and I'd been following his podcast the entire time. But the sermon that I listened to yesterday, and I listened to his sermon almost every day, the sermon he mentioned yesterday that the British explorer that discovered King Tut's tomb, and I apologize for not remembering the name of the explorer, but when they discovered King Tut's tomb, they were so excited. This was this elaborate, ornate coffin, and when they opened it, they were so excited to find another coffin.
Seems about right.
And they opened that coffin, and they found another coffin. So
it was like those little Russian dolls, whatever
right,
they're called.
He's like the Gahushka dolls, right? So
I believe his name is Howard Carter. It seems like that's what my research is pulling up here.
Okay, it's not fair that I'm recording this on my iPhone and I'm watching my notes on my iPad, so I don't get the luxury of Googling. All right, that's not fair.
Well, I don't Google. That's good. Good for you to know. We fully support Microsoft here, so I bang things, but it sounds kind of vulgar at times. Just bang it. But anyway, I just wanted to provide you with that data. But please continue.
Damn it! Let me finish my story.
Oh, man.
So when they finally get to the last solid gold coffin with the body of King Tutankhamun inside, it's coated in gold silk thread. I'm talking solid gold thread.
Bigly.
And I asked, after going line by line, again, my interview with Sheriff Estrada lasted about 25 minutes, and I don't know, you and I go round and round over this. I believe a podcast should last about 40 minutes. You say it's okay if it goes longer. Well, I tried to keep my interview with Estrada at 20, went 25. But my interview with Mitch went over an hour because I was going line by line with Obama's speech, playing him clips, and our readers hopefully will be patient enough to sit through it. It was a really good interview. But I finished by asking Mitch, after I told him this story about King Tutankhamun and the unpacking of the coffins, I asked him, I said, when we get through with 4 years of Donald Trump as president, what will we finally find when we unpack this man as our president? So I wanted to let you know that, because I know that you didn't hear it, because I just finished the interview before you and I talked, and you weren't able to sit in on that.
Correct.
Speak to that while I cue up the clip that we're going to listen to from President Obama as you and I begin our talk.
Sure. A quick preface. Thanks for having me on here. I know you introduced me a certain way, but as I've said to you and everybody that works with us, I view it just that way. We're colleagues. Somebody unfortunately has to have the 51% in that situation to make the decisions. But you're very kind to call me your boss. But I feel like that's a character in a video game, and NPC, if you will. But that said, thanks for having me on. As far as the story goes, it's a very good story, and it's a fascinating way. It's a lot kinder than saying it's an onion, I suppose. Really, this is going to sound kind of like a cliched response, but it's almost impossible to say. There have been so many days where I've woken up and thought, did this really happen? Not just the fact that Donald Trump is president, but the fact that Donald Trump is president.
Right.
After this campaign, where any way that anyone could be insulted, from Little Marco to Lion Ted to Crooked Hillary to Low Energy Jeb, and that's base on Carly Farina. It's like, and Megyn Kelly bleeding from wherever. It makes Edwin Edwards seem like child's play.
Right.
Okay, so
and that says
honestly,
a lot from someone from Louisiana. That says a lot.
Yes, Edwin Edwards famously said to poor Dave Treen, he was a good guy, but Dave Treen asked the double talking Edwards, how come you talk out of both sides of your mouth? And Edwin Edwards, without missing a beat, said, so the people like you with half a brain can understand me.
Right.
And it makes Edwin Edwards seem like Mother Teresa. So that said, I really hope, what I hope we're going to get is someone that is a realist who accomplishes, accepts that there are limitations to the federal system, does not overstep those bounds, but also it does make our enemies respect us, that if there is a line drawn over which you shall not cross, if it is crossed, that we respond accordingly, but also deals compassionately while at the same time upholding the law as pertains to the American people, and truly reaches through some really damaged sectors of our society. I think Donald Trump, the president-elect, is in a very unique situation, specifically as pertaining, forget who started the birther thing, okay? denies things he tweeted yesterday. I mean, I know that's an extreme example, but I saw a meme that if he had lost the election, we would have seen interviews one day where Donald Trump vehemently denied ever running for the presidency. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but I think he's in a unique position to reach across the aisle to, let's just go ahead and say it, non-whites, and say, hey, look, I say certain things to gain acclaim, to make a point, but I really want to come together and make, as cheesy as that sounds, and let's have criminal justice reform. Let's have compassionate palliative care as pertains to medical marijuana. And I'm not espousing these things as good policy decisions. What I'm saying is I hope that, there's if you want to call it idealism, I call it sensationalism version of Donald Trump, but I also hope there's a very pragmatic man that we get. What are we actually going to get? That's anyone's guess.
All right, that eloquently put for our podcast listeners. Ordinarily, the podcast is 2 issues, a rapid-fire round, and wrapped up by an in-mix company portion.
Well, I figure if it's too long for any of them, they all know where the X is on the dialogue bar. So as much as I don't want them to leave, anybody that seeks out the podcast, I mean, they know how to move on from it. So,
well, we've had 2 interviews so far in the podcast, and I know Jonathan's left you and me to hold on to these last 20 or 30 minutes of the podcast. So I'm gonna hit you with a clip from President Obama's farewell address.
Okay.
And then I'll hit you with another. And then I'm going to hit you with a third. The first two are a challenge, not necessarily for you to debate the president, although you are allowed to do that. The third is more reflective on the president's part, and I'd like to dwell on that for a little while. But after these 3 clips, we will fulfill our podcast listener, perhaps all 3 of them, with our in-mix company conclusion. So let's listen to the first clip. And this is the most definitive 2 minutes of the speech that the president gave, arguing on behalf of the success of his administration. Here we go.
8 years ago, that America would reverse a great recession, reboot our auto industry, and unleash the longest stretch of job creation in our history. If I had told you that we would open up a new chapter with the Cuban people, shut down Iran's nuclear weapons program without firing a shot, take out the mastermind of 9/11. If I had told you that we would win marriage equality and secure the right to health insurance for another 20 million of our fellow citizens, if I had told you all that, you might have said our sights were set a little too high. But that's what we did. That's what you did. You were the change. You answered people's hopes. And because of you, by almost every measure, America is a better, stronger place than it was when we started.
All right, Jonathan. Were you able to hear those points and take notes?
I was.
All right. So again, you don't have to deal with each and every one of those 7 or 8 points, but tell me again, having listened to the president's farewell address 3 times all the way through, and as your senior editor, I'm asking
that's a wretched excess.
I'm asking you to trust me that is the most succinct 2-minute argument of the entire speech for why the Obama administration over the last 8 years was successful. Please believe me. If you believe that, then you've got those 2 minutes, and that's the entirety of what you need to disagree with or agree with about what Obama did or did not do for this country. So go ahead.
Well, I don't want to. Nobody likes a naysayer, but I will say this: he paints the president, with all due respect, has painted, as a lot of politicians have, Republican and Democrat alike, a very disingenuous picture concerning employment, and this is something of particular interest to me as an aspiring economist. Never is the real number, the actual numbers of unemployment actually discussed. Never does he mention the people that are no longer looking for work or for reasons unknown have dropped out of the workforce altogether. What they talk about is a very short-term picture of who's filed for unemployment and who's not. So in reality, that's one claim that's very difficult to verify.
And by the way,
the longest stretch of job creation in history.
To remind our listeners, and I know you didn't hear this, but to remind our listeners, Mitch Tyner said the exact same, raised the exact same issue.
And again, that's not me saying I'm not trying to besmirch the president. That's not just something he did. Okay, that's something that and I understand. Okay, it's all right. We'll move on from that, but I just wanted to point that out. Regarding Cuba, a big question I have is, what did the Cuban people get out of that exchange? Plenty of business people are going to make big money, and nothing against business. Again, I'm an aspiring economist. Okay? I am a businessman. I hope, but what freedoms did they gain? Did we parlay our presence there into anything to free political dissidents that are jailed? And the answer to that is no. So again, as far as Iran is concerned, the money that they received, the lifting of sanctions, all we did was delayed their ability to obtain a nuclear weapon. And the fact is, they have yet to fully comply with the treaty. One that our most important ally in the Middle East, the State of Israel, vehemently opposed. I don't consider that a success.
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting that you challenge, just like Mitch, that you challenge the numbers and the way they're being bent. Each of you challenge them in different ways, but that you bring up and focus on the Cuba comment. Does that have to do with you being a Navy man?
No, I simply look at it, put another name on it. Change the name of the country. I look at it as a human rights issue. Forget the fact that I'm against communism, but the fact remains that there are political dissidents that have been jailed, that religious freedoms have been curtailed, and what advantage do we parlay the presence, the massive presence that the American economy, our business people are going to bring there? Did we get anything out of that for those people in terms of human rights? And the answer to that question is no.
Okay.
Of course, more money is going to flow in, but that said, on Bin Laden, thank you, Mr. President, for making that call. Okay? The fact is, I believe that any president would have done it, but that is not to take away from the fact that when the opportunity was there, they struck and they did the right thing. Now, I'm glad they made that call, not to let him stay in trial and let that international fiasco go on. That was strong work. So that's all I really have on that. I'm happy for equality for all human beings in terms of contractual arrangements, and that's all I'm going to say on social matters.
Okay, well, that's not all you're going to say on social matters, because we're about to talk about health care. Let's listen to the president's comments on that.
A 10-year low.
Oh, boy.
The uninsured rate has never, ever been lower. Healthcare costs are rising at the slowest rate in 50 years. And I've said, and I mean it, if anyone can put together a plan that is demonstrably better than the improvements we've made to our healthcare system that covers as many people at less cost, I will publicly support it.
So I'll say the same thing to you that I said to Mitch. Let's overlook the last part of that statement. Let's be kind and accept that the president means what he said, that he would accept.
Right. If you believe in that, we'll stipulate that he would support a better plan.
He would actually support publicly a better plan. Let's stipulate that and move forward.
Sure.
But let's deal with the and again, I know you haven't watched the speech 3 times, so again, accept my word for it that that's the strongest statement that he made during the speech about the ACA and its impact on healthcare and healthcare costs specifically. That healthcare costs have risen at a lower rate than any time since we have been recording healthcare costs. Address that.
Well, and something else we'll stipulate as well is that we'll give him a mulligan on at least a couple of dozen times. I believe the number was higher, brazenly mislabeling the effects of the plan in terms of one's own existing physician and healthcare plan. If you like your doctor and your plan, you can keep it. Okay, we'll give him a mulligan on that. But this again is disingenuous on a number of levels, because I think, hearkening back to the past, several statesmen have said this different ways, but the government should not be in the position of trying to solve problems that the government cannot possibly fix. And proof in the pudding right here is the fact that one of the biggest endorsements of the Affordable Care Act, patient protection, was that insurance companies have a monopoly, that this is a problem. Well, that's kind of funny, because we now have states where there's, one option. One sounds like a monopoly to me. The other issue is that we still have not addressed the biggest problem that has affected insurance competition in this country and benefiting the consumer, the American taxpayer, and that is allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines. And that's something that a number of non-politicians, economists, insurance executives have addressed and said, hey, that's the key problem here. Now, on the insured numbers, as far as I understand, the president is actually correct on that, and that's something that any opposition is going to have a real problem in terms of public relations with repealing this.
We actually have 22 million more people insured.
Right.
After
so you go repealing this without replacing it, and that's, forget the effects on the American people for one moment here, okay, of taking insurance away. That is a political nightmare. I don't believe that's going to be allowed to happen by tacticians like Paul Ryan and Senator McConnell. However, if they were to make such a misstep, that would be a PR disaster. But that said, it is a good thing that just because you were sick in the past, you cannot be denied insurance now without paying for the notes. Unfortunately, again, some of the biggest aspects that needed addressing have not been addressed. So, again, this is something that perhaps the government is unable to fix because of it's lumbering under its own weight. I don't know. But one of the biggest things was monopolies. Well, they still exist, and there's no competition, which, I don't know.
Well, you don't know. I don't know. We're speculating. That's why we have journalism. That's why we have podcasts. But part of why we don't know, the president in his speech argued, is because we are in these we don't know bubbles. These bubbles, not so much where we don't know, but these bubbles where we know everything and we don't need anyone else to tell us other than people that agree.
Is he speaking from personal experience?
Well, let's listen.
His own perspective, I mean?
Let's listen.
And that's not easy to do. For too many of us, it's become safer to retreat into our own bubbles, whether in our neighborhoods or on college campuses or places of worship, or especially our social media feeds. Surrounded by people who look like us and share the same political outlook and never challenge our assumptions. And the rise of naked partisanship and increasing economic and regional stratification, the splintering of our media into a channel for every taste, all this makes this great sorting seem natural, even inevitable. And increasingly, we become so secure in our bubbles that we start accepting only information, whether it's true or not, that fits our opinions, instead of basing our opinions on the evidence that is out there.
So is Obama in the bubble? Are you in the bubble?
I have to ask.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm in the bubble.
Please don't play me another clip. I got to say this. What is his point? What was he trying to? Please don't play me anymore. I can't take it. But what is he hoping to accomplish with those remarks? I'll gladly address them. But what was his point? Did he have one? I'm serious.
To be honest, and this might be the most serious disagreement that you and I have ever had, journalistically, is I actually think that that's the most impactful and important statement he made in the entire speech. This concept.
I'm not even.
I'm
not saying he's right or wrong. I'm saying what was his point?
An inside joke between you and me. We both know someone who was beloved by both of us, with whom we do not speak anymore because of when we talk to this person, we get put in this bubble by this other person where you can't. And he goes on later, and it takes.
Wait a minute, what? Santa Claus is dead?
Right. No, the Easter Bunny, man. Get it right. No, but that when you talk to certain people, it's not only that they only listen to right-wing news or left-wing news, but it's not just that. But when you give an opinion to certain people, they immediately put you in a bubble where you are now.
Right, it's called projection.
Person.
But what was the president's point here? Did he have a solution, or was he just crying about something?
No, his point. In my opinion, his point was.
What does he propose we do?
Get out of your bubble. Get out of the bubble and go talk face to face.
You know what? I know what the point is. The point is, with the repeal of the Propaganda Act, we need to have the strong arm of Aunt Sam and the nanny state get involved in the media and not allow people to burst our bubbles. And let's just have one big, happy, communal bubble that all the Ivy League trial lawyers that have ruined the country to begin with can lecture down to idiot Southerners like you and I and inform our views. Then there'll be harmony.
All right.
Do I exaggerate?
From ModState's world headquarters, tell us where we stand as a media enterprise and how we are going to change this. I think that's a fantastic segue. Take it away.
Oh, my.
I'm sorry. I set you up, man. I did. I set you up.
Well, it's not that. It's just I don't like the concept of crying about something without a proposed solution.
All right,
okay?
we'll propose a solution, but more specifically.
And sometimes this is frustrating. Okay, this is particularly frustrating for people that believe in ever expanding central government, and I find it hard to believe that a chief executive of the land that has overseen a doubling of the national debt, that's a statistical fact, since he came into office because of government growth, does not believe in government growth. That's not possible.
Well, first of all, you're incorrect.
Okay.
It's a tripling of the national debt.
Well, right, but there's a portion of it also that we owe to ourselves, interagency debt, and let's worry about paying ourselves back later. So I look at it a little differently, but that's besides the point.
This is why you're the managing editor and I'm only a senior editor. This is why I'm an aspiring economist, is because I unfortunately have the desire to study this bull. But anyway, so more to the point, I don't know, and this frustrates people that want to see the central government, come alongside, and you have a right to health care. You have a right to the big meanie billionaires to share their wealth with you. You're entitled to these things. Yeah,
why?
Because it's the government's job. Obama's opinions and our disagreements with his opinions aside, our second issue is supposed to be ModState.
I get it. Believe me, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll allow you. I'm not trying to guide
My point here is regarding the government expansion is there may not be an answer. Okay? There may not be. For instance, there is no way, no matter how much you try, to sign a piece of paper as chief executive that the Congress has passed to eliminate hate. You can toughen penalties on hate crimes all you want, but you can't control what's in the human heart. So along those same lines, how are you going to control people writing things? And fake news is not new. We've had presidential candidates, campaigns going on before we even had a 10th president, where one called their opponent a hermaphrodite. Okay? That wasn't true.
Yeah, well, even Woodward and Bernstein, the most famous journalists of all time, were going after a president based on innuendo and rumor, and and half of what they reported was incorrect based on people that were totally untrustworthy. They just happened to end up with someone that actually was legit and a story that was true.
Sure, we'll go with that. That said, as far as President Obama is concerned, my gut reaction is the same man that said voting for Donald Trump would be an insult to my legacy. This is sour grapes. This is whining that the anointed one didn't win. Next question.
Right. So where is ModState? And what is the role that we're going to play in the new stream media moving forward?
This is probably one of the most straightforward segments we can have, and that is that we're not a place to come to and say that communism is wrong, or to say that libertarianism is wrong, left, right, centrism, whatever. Again, I've said it many times in writing, and I'll say it again here on this podcast, that all views which do not call for violence will be allowed. This is a forum for all viewpoints to be expressed and to be heard. And I'm to date, we're not even 9 months old since our 30 April launch of last year. And I'm very proud of the work we've done in allowing even those that we don't agree with. And collectively, I don't agree with probably at least, I'll be kind here and say 50% of what's on ModState. But that's the whole point of ModState, is that everyone's view gets a place at the table. So I think that we present something very important here, that the entire point in going to ModState.com, or in the future downloading our app, or perhaps even subscribing to the monthly print magazine, or listening to this podcast, is you may hear some viewpoints that you don't like, but the fact is we're willing to have all spectrums considered, and that's not a marketing ploy. That's not a spin zone. That's not a hardball tactic. This is actually evidenced by actions. There's actions that go along with the words, for instance, that we're saying tonight. And so I don't have to spend marketing dollars. ModState LLC doesn't have to spend money to tell people, hey, we've allowed a lot of different viewpoints on ModState. We rest our case just by giving the address of the site.
Well, resting his case is the most powerful, second most good-looking man employed at ModState, Jonathan DeViney. Good to have you on the podcast, Jonathan.
Yes, sir.